Sheelagh Whittaker, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm thrilled to have you here today.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
So for those of you who are just listening and not watching the video, Sheila's got a very interesting, view behind her with some really interesting art and just beautiful colors. So I want to just say it's a very happy environment that you're in right now, Sheelagh. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you. And yes, it
your
is happy.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
So I, your paper napkin is simple, short, but I think there's a lot to it. So I want to share it with everybody. It says, "Tell the truth quickly." Why did you share that with me?
Well, when I got the opportunity to think about a paper napkin piece of wisdom, and I think, there is a long tradition of clever things written on paper napkins. And I've been aware of it for a long time. So I thought, oh, okay, Whittaker, here's your chance. And I was out eating lunch in a very nice art gallery here in Toronto with a long time female friend who had been through a lot with me. And so we had a delightful lunch, and the um, waitress came up with our bill and said it was such and such. And I said, well, I was totally responsible for it because I had missed the previous lunch that we'd set up, and I felt very guilty. And then I said, but it sounds low. And she said, well, no, there's this on it, and this on it, and this on it, and this on it. And I looked at her and I said, no, you forgot at the beginning, I had a hot toddy, and that's not on this list. And she said, oh, well, I'll go in at it. And when she left, I said to my friend Karen, I said, that's it. That's it. Tell the truth quickly. Big things and small. It's easy to think, oh, well, I'll save $5.50 or whatever I don't know what the hot toddy cost, but there's a tiny temptation sneaks past you in that kind of case. And I have learned over time that certainly the best thing for me to do is to say right away, no, that's not right. I owe you more. Or no, you're not going to get this opportunity. You're very good, but I shouldn't leave you hanging out there. So then I decided that's what would be my paper napkin wisdom. And I've thought about it since, and I've thought that it's helped me a lot in life. It saved me a lot of angst, of hand wringing, of, oh, what should I do or say? Because when you don't tell the truth quickly, you can get caught in subsequent untruths or in trying to figure out when should you tell the truth or how to make the truth less impactful now that you've given it an outing, you know? So that's how I came to it.
You know, so there's a, and I wondered about this, and I wonder how quickly we'd get there. But the imagery of this little figure on your shoulder facing you, this art that's behind you. Now, that's not what that art is, but the way your posture is with this little figure on your shoulder facing you, speaking to you, is neat, along with this tiny temptation idea that sometimes just tries to sneak past you. And what I liked about what you said there was there's an awareness that you have to bring because that temptation is there, and if you're not careful, it will sneak past you, right?
Yes.
Even create hesitation, isn't it true?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Now, look, I think all of us have been in a place where we wondered for a moment or longer what to say about something, and maybe it's not as simple as a hot toddy missing from a from a bill at a restaurant. Maybe it's something more complex. Maybe feelings are involved, or saying something might jeopardize a relationship in our perspectives. And that hesitation is also something that it sort of sneaks past you. It's not temptation comes in a lot of different ways, doesn't it? It
Yes, yes, it does. And the hesitation is a communication.
So tell me about that. What does that mean?
Well, you say to somebody, good news, good news. You're going to be invited to such and such an important dinner. And you say, oh, who's coming? And they tell you, and then you say, oh, oh, I might be busy that day, something like that.
Sure.
You've told them that you're not actually telling the truth. You're going to go away and decide whether or not you like those people enough to come.
Mm-hmm.
But the other person knows that, so you may as well have been straightforward.
And could they not fill that gap with other narratives as well that might be even more damaging? Like, this person doesn't like me. I'm not important enough for them to show up on this day.
Yes,
Right? There's a
yes, they
whole bunch of
can.
other things, right?
Yes, they can. Or what
Or
do they have that
even
could be more important? Or, yeah.
or even the more simple one, which is, why wouldn't you just tell me the truth? Like, why wouldn't you just say that you're not interested in being there with that group of people?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's also distance. So I think that tiny temptation that sneaks past you in that moment, and that's one of the things that really caught me about your napkin, because there's nothing unique about it, but the idea was quickly, and
Yes,
the speed of the truth is really important.
yes. And you read it perfectly because it is tell the truth quickly. When I heard you read it, I thought he's caught the message that it's quickly is the most important, almost part of the message.
So is that okay? So sometimes people feel that when rendering an opinion, let's say their truth is about an opinion about something,
Mm-hmm.
and and they're asking, people are asking, hey, what do you think of this thing that I've poured my life's work into? What do you think about it? Right? And we hesitate in that moment too, because we want to be kind, even though maybe they use salt instead of sugar and it tastes awful, right? But how, I think you're saying it still applies there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's interesting. Just last week, I joined for the first time a writers group.
Mhm.
And this writers group circulates a chapter in advance of the meeting to everyone. And then they go around the room. It's a small group discussing the quality of the writing, the story as it emerges, or whatever. Like I said, I've never been in this before, but it's very important actually in that environment to be honest, because they're asking you, how can I improve my art?
Yeah.
But you can also really hurt their feeling, end up a person that they can say, oh, I don't really like her, but she was honest.
That's really neat, right? Because part of telling the truth quickly, doesn't it also step back when we're asking for the truth, that we ought to ask for what we're really asking for? It's not, what do you think of this? Sometimes we're asking, what do you think of me? And
Yes,
that's a different question. And
yes.
sometimes we mistake the answer, right? Like, if I asked you, what do I, if I'm new to cooking, let's go back to that example, and I'm and I and I and I make something, this dish that I followed a recipe for, and I'm really proud of it, and I'm trying to become a better cook, and I offer it to you, and I say, hey, I'm trying to be a better cook. This is my attempt. What do you think? Right now, the context is, I'm wanting to learn, how did I do, as opposed to anything else. So you can answer the question quickly and honestly because I've asked a better question. Doesn't that also apply from the point of asking a question and asking
Well, some
feedback?
of it depends on how well they know you, of course.
Of course.
We have a wonderful story in our family. My sister-in-law used to cook. She wasn't a great cook. And she used to cook various things, some of which I think were good and some not so good. And the sort of chuckle around the family is that if she made something that wasn't very good for the first time, her husband would say, that's very nice, dear, but I wouldn't want to eat it every day. And we all knew, and she knew,
Yeah.
that that was a sort of sweet code for yuck.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great. So let's bring this to the boardroom, right? Let's bring this to a company situation, a leadership situation, and you've been a leader in many different ways. How do we
Hmm.
apply that to that situation? How do we apply it in the boardroom or in leadership?
Well, I think one way that we apply it in leadership is by making sure that you're operating really kind of very democratically. If there's a bunch of you in the room, that you really have taken a fair temperature of the room and given people a chance to describe, maybe at a more general level, where they're leading on a subject without having to be personally without having to be the only one that said X, Y, or Z. And you can interpret that what they might be saying. They might say, I'm not sure this is a great idea. And you know from your previous experience with this person that that means they're saying it really sucks, you know?
Yeah, goes back to the dinner example, right?
Back to the dinner example. Or you have somebody that's sort of shaking in their seat for excitement at the possibility of whatever it is. But it gives you a chance. First of all, it gives you a chance to sort of take the temperature, especially if you're going to have to be a decision maker.
Mm.
But second of all, it gives people a chance to feel that they had integrity, that they were able, in the best way they could, to be constructive about the idea or the situation or the proposal or whatever.
Yeah, so I think what's interesting about what you're saying is telling the truth quickly isn't an open license to be cruel to people.
No.
Because you're talking about being constructive, but
Yeah.
also truthful, and
Yeah.
all of that can happen at the same speed, can't it?
Yes, it can. Yeah.
So does that
Like
require?
I could have said, and I have been known to say this kind of thing, like, you forgot the hot toddy, and I want you to put it on the bill. But by the way, it wasn't very good, you know.
Mhm.
So you could add a message if you wanted to. And if you're honest, your message is more likely to be heard. Well, otherwise you won't give the message because you won't have admitted you had the hot toddy.
That's right. But of course, you had the hot toddy, so you were a little bit more open to being.
Mellow, more mellow, yes.
You were more.
Yeah.
So, so th- I find it really interesting though that you're suggesting that it's possible, right? Because I think that people think of the speed of truth almost always being harsh, that it's a harsh truth, it's the brutal honesty. I mean, those are the terms that are usually bandied about, but you're not talking about that. You're talking about something that is inclusive, but still transparent.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm talking about, wow, that's an amazing idea. Or, well, that's an amazing idea. And what Jeff over here is suggesting is going to make it even better, kind of thing. That sort of thing. More, but then these people who are dealing with you know that when you say, got any other ideas, that you're being honest.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. So do you think that the quickly part, again, the time, because I think that one of the other things that you said is silence is an answer,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it may not be the answer you wish to convey as a leader. Is that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So also speed promotes clarity, doesn't it? Even if
Yes, it
you're not particularly clear with what you're saying, silence is less clear than something.
yes. Because one of the things is sometimes if you speak your truth, like I really don't like that in bright pink. Do you think you should have done it in green? And then you hear the other person or other people say, well, it's springtime, you see. And we were thinking that we wanted to evoke a fresh feeling about it. And we know you like pink, but that's because that's your thing. And you can't always have pink, Sheelagh. But it gives people a chance um, to also shift their own opinions
Yeah.
or to come to a consensus, to come to some kind of consensus, or to leave out the part that the person told you they didn't like or that they were dishonest about or whatever.
and time, like the passage of time creates a at least an emotional investment in what's being said, isn't it? Like if I say something, go back to your pink and green example. If I say it should be in pink, and or and leave it there for a day, a week, or a month, and then you come back afterwards and say, well, I shouldn't have been in green. There's two things. All that silence has done two things. I'm more invested in this idea. I think we've moved past it to something else, and now we're rewinding not just on that one decision, but everything else that comes from that as well.
Yes. Yes, I
So,
think so. I think it's the same thing with, but I was thinking about the example, tell the truth quickly, when someone, for example, is not going to get a job or not going to get a promotion.
mm,
If you tell them right away, but in a nice way, like, I'm sorry, you don't really have the qualifications for the job that you wanted, so you won't be getting it. However, I thought this was good about you, and this was good about you, and maybe you can address this by doing something rather. Versus, I haven't made up my mind yet. I'll let you know in 2 weeks. When you already know.
yeah.
You already know. I think that particular thing is really cruel. I remember, suffering at the waiting to get the proper answer thing. And you're, a lot of your life is hanging on whether or not you get this job, and the person is just playing with you.
So
And
let me ask you though,
mhm,
because you've had this on both sides of it, and I want to
mhm.
sort of rewind a bit. But have you always had this philosophy of telling the truth quickly, or is that something that you learn to exercise more through your experiences?
I think I learned it to exercise more through experiences. It was funny. I have this story about my daughter. My when she was 2.5, I had some animal crackers. This was back in Ottawa. We were living in. I had some animal crackers, and I put about 8 on the table, and I said, "There's your animal crackers." And she said, and I put the rest away. And she said, "Mom, I'm going out to play in the backyard. Watch the animal crackers for me." So she's out playing for quite a while, and I eat a couple because I know there's more in the cupboard. And she comes back into the house, and she looks at her animal crackers, and she looks at me, and she says, "Mom, what did I tell you? 2.5. What did I tell you?" I said, "You told me to watch your animal crackers." And she said, "And what did you do?" And I said, "Well, I ate a couple, but there's plenty more in the cupboard. I'll get them, right now." And she says, "What did you learn from this?"
That's great.
Oh, she's still like that. She's a crown prosecutor now. It wouldn't surprise you at all to hear that.
No, no, no. It sounded like she was running you through discovery at the time.
Yes, that's right.
That's amazing. I think so it's interesting to see, that this was also a learned thing. What did you notice about your leadership style, or how people came to you? I mean, I think this biggest part of it, I think in leadership we want people to come to us with things that are figured out and things that are not figured out, and we want there to be an open door for things that work and don't work so we can learn at scale, right? We don't want
Hmm.
10 people on our team making the same mistake and learning 10 different ways. That's a way to slow down an organizational growth and create major problems in an organization. So we want people to learn in public. How did this tell the truth quickly uh idea promote learning in your organizations?
I think that the thing that promoted honesty in my organizations was, what were the ramifications if you didn't tell the truth, but you were found out?
Okay.
And one of the more dramatic ones I can think of, because it was big stuff, was a very shamefaced a smart young financial person came to me. I don't remember if his boss was with him or not, but anyway, came to say that he had to tell me that he had made a mathematical error in a payout that we had made, and it had been during a long, difficult negotiation, and that he had miscalculated by almost $1 million.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, by gosh. And it sort of took my breath away because that's a lot of money.
Sure is.
I also, though, at the same time thought he's come here and told me that in the course of his work, he's made a mistake. And it's significantly large that he really needs to tell me. Well, I never did ask what the betting was behind his back, because I'm sure if he was coming to have to tell me, a lot of people had been talking to each other about what he should do. I don't know what the betting was behind his back, but I'm sure a fair number figured he'd be out the door that night, you know. But I just thought about it and I thought, well, we can tell the people we've miscalculated and see what they do, see if they have integrity about admitting that they got more than they should. And maybe they will and maybe they won't. But we all work hard and we're trying to do things right. And sometimes we make big mistakes. Anyway, he didn't get fired. And I can't remember if the people we overpaid had integrity or not, which is interesting that I can't remember that part.
Right. I was just going to say, I think that's an interesting thing because,
But he was, he was a young man trying to do his best and work his way up, and we all make mistakes.
so what impact did that have on the rest of the team when they learned about that?
Well, I don't exactly know, you know, but I'm sure some of them thought I was too easy on him, because people think that. But I think people thought that's an interesting person. That's an interesting leader. I should see what she does. I think I'm hoping anyway. I'm hoping that that was the case.
Yeah, so I believe that when people make mistakes and share those mistakes and we can all learn from them,
Mhm.
the value is immeasurable because we've now at that point, organizationally, you've borne the cost of the
Yeah,
mistake,
yeah,
right? So you might as well get the reward from it and spread
yeah.
the learning around.
Yes, that's
And
right.
if you don't, and that same mistake were to happen again, well, then we're just, we're now foolish.
Then he'd be fired, I'll tell you that. But
Right.
I bet you dollars to donuts that he would never make a mistake like that again in his life.
No, and he would be better for it. The organization is better from it because not just they're not the only ones who got the learning, but everybody got the learning.
Hmm.
And the learning also wasn't to cover it up. The learning was to share it and share
Yeah,
the mistakes. And so I'll bet you there was huge organizational value there. And I know I can think of other stories where people made big mistakes, went to their CEOs thinking they were going to be fired, and instead said, no, we've just invested now X number of dollars in this mistake and in you. So that's your
yeah,
executive education. Pass it on and never do it again.
yeah,
And
yeah. That's a
nurture
good
the
way of putting.
organization, right?
That's a good way of putting it. Also, I think that senior people are human.
Yeah.
Senior people have made mistakes in their lives, maybe not so big, but maybe still significant, and lived in fear of what was going to happen to them. And maybe sometimes for senior people, something bad happened, you
Yeah.
know, and you don't want, and you think that really wasn't fair. And why would I do that to someone else? So some of it is sort of morality, caring for other people.
Yeah. I want to ask you about this lived in fear part because this is a nice segue to this figure off your left shoulder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this figure is a beautiful piece of art, which I find uh, quite provocative in a number of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's a woman wearing a skirt. She is sitting atop a ladder that's leaning up against a wall, and she sort of has the demeanor of having reached this point, but being weary or fatigued, um, or tired in some way.
Yeah, that's what I see. I see, ah,
Yeah,
that's
right.
what I see.
So,
Yes.
so, so I know that this was gifted to you
Yeah.
from one of your organizations and your teams,
Mm-hmm.
and this idea of living in fear. I mean, I see this figure, this woman who's climbed the ladder, has reached the top of the ladder, and is, having that sigh, that sigh.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't there an extra amount of fear of judgment, of fear of, I don't know, everything that goes into that. There's so much in that idea. You were practicing this live the truth, tell the truth quickly, but at the same time, perhaps we're fearing judgment from elsewhere. Is that wrong? Was I?
Um, I think, in fact, what I see in it is that people think if you get to the top of the ladder, that you think you are, you know, um, amazing. That you've done it, and you kind of got the decoration for it, and everybody else is kind of, second tier or whatever. And what I see in it is, no, you aren't sitting there thinking how smart I am, and how you might be thinking how lucky I am, because luck plays a big, big role. But you aren't self satisfied at the level people imagine that you are. And I was very impressed that the artist captured that, because he's an artist, but that it isn't all about, oh wow, look at me, I did it, ha ha. It's not that at all. It's, I'm pleased at a certain level, but it wasn't that easy, you know.
Right.
So there, you could read really a lot into it. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
she
remarkable.
she has a lovely simplicity, and it is remarkable, and it's a very insightful for a male artist to see that sense. And I'm sure that males at the top of the ladder feel something, but not, they feel their own set of something, I think.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
they don't feel that something. They may feel like imposters, for example, or something, but I don't know. I may be assuming maybe males do feel tired at the top.
Well, I think there are some shared experiences, but there are some unique
Yeah,
experiences as well, and I think that's appropriate.
yeah.
I just think that I think it's interesting when we talk about all of this sort of fear of judgment, this living in fear, this idea of how leaders are perceived, but how we all are perceived, and how that also sometimes leads to us not telling the truth quickly. Like we might get there, but we may not get there quickly. So what is one way that you use, or do you have a reminder that you use to ensure that you are responding quickly when necessary? Because there's a follow-up question to that. So what are your reminder tools?
Good question. Well, the quickly is one. Don't overstudy it. Especially, and it equates to magnitude too, right? Although, in fact, the big magnitude ones that you are tempted to lie about, you should decide quicker than the hot toddy.
Sure.
You know, and so, but these days, um, I get questions from my kids about what they should do, because their lives are complicated, and I love to be involved in their lives. And in those cases, I try very hard to say, this is the honest route to this problem. This is my route.
Mhm.
But I, on the other hand, try and balance, the the cookies in the cupboard, and think, okay, but I'm not all knowing and all seeing. This is their truth, so I have to be careful.
Yeah, that's a powerful thing. The other part of this was, there's a great truth that when asking a commitment question to someone, it's
Hmm.
important to be silent and wait for the answer. And so telling the truth quickly, eh, tell me how it applies on both sides of that sort of adage, that idea that when asking a commitment question, it's important to wait for the answer and be silent waiting for the answer. So there's the patience and time involved in that. But how does that play into this wisdom?
Well, it's interesting because something in your formation of the question made me remember probably the most important time in my life to be truthful. My second husband and I were getting pretty serious, and I really loved him, but I was no kid. I had life behind me, he had life behind him.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of scope for finding out something about that the person did when they were 25 that you really think, ugh, who is this person? So we agreed to tell each other everything that we thought was bad that we'd ever done.
Wow.
And it was scary at a certain point because I know after I told him all my bad things, it takes a long time, he was quiet for quite a long time. And I thought, oh no, I've done it. I've done it. I've lost him because I told him something about myself that he just can't tolerate. Because there are, and I listened to all of his things, and there were one or two that kind of hit me in the heart. But I could see that you couldn't live to his age and not have done some things that might hit your wife to be in the heart. But anyway, subsequently, we were married for, I think, 32 years. I was so glad that we had done that. I just, it really mattered.
So it's almost like the bigger the commitment question, the better the truth,
Yeah,
the more quick, the more important. And you said this, don't overstudy it, just do it. Um, Thinking about, first of all, thank you for sharing the story. It reminded me of when my mother-in-law and found her second husband and how that relationship came together. The story of that and the letters they wrote that they didn't share with us, but they told us about was really was very similar. And in fact, very not dissimilar to the fluky kind of amazing, transparent conversation that Stacy and I had when we got together. And I think how we accidentally, on purpose, had this tell the truth quickly conversation.
yeah, exactly.
And it was great. And it was spurred though by us attending her best friend's wedding, where she was maid of honor. And it just made me realize, oh my gosh, this is important to me. And I need to tell the truth quickly about how I feel about a number of,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's interesting how that comes about.
It is interesting how it comes about. And it is interesting the things you're scared that they'll react to, some of which they do. But it feels so much safer in the relationship afterward
Mhm.
that you've done that.
Right. Um,
That
even if it doesn't go the way you thought it would
mm-hmm,
go,
mm-hmm.
it's still better, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, way better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Uh, Sheelagh, I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom with me here today. You have an interesting shout out as well. So just for everybody listening, at the end of every podcast this season, we've been paying forward this concept is what you appreciate appreciates. What gratitude you put into the world increases and appreciates in value with all the people you share it with. And to inspire this kind of kindness, this movement that we are lucky to be a part of, I ask all of our guests to shout out someone, something, or some group of people in some way. So, who would you like to shout out today?
Well, I would like to shout out to my sister Penny and my brother John, who are respectively 9 and 7 years older than I am. So they have had various roles in my life.
Yes.
But I just am so grateful for them being the kind, loving, and moral siblings that they've been. It's been, I couldn't ask for better.
That's wonderful. And I can see the big smile on your face when even thinking about them. You've evoked them.
Yes, yes,
So
I love them.
yeah, I can see that. Sheelagh, I feel very privileged to have spent this time with you, and thank you for sharing your bright and sunny space, along with your bright and sunny ideas. I really do appreciate you. Thank you.
Very nice to talk to you.